Alright, everyone. I did my research project on adolescent sexual activity. I'm currently camping right now in Arizona, so bear with the quality and audio. So, in this research project, we're going to discuss some key points about the factors and variables directly related to adolescent sexual activity. So, adolescent sexual activity factors, as indicated by the Center of Disease Control, indicates that having sexual intercourse during adolescence is normative behavior, with more than 60% of boys and girls reporting that they had sex by the 12th grade. Adolescence is typically when young people start exploring their sexuality and become socialized to romantic sexual relationships. Since the earlier adolescents have sex, the higher the potential risk for unintended pregnancies. Says the impact of teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases are detrimental to adolescents' life due to their underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, which limits their ability to process the consequences of their actions logically. I feel like these are the very good key points in the types of consequences that come from early sexual activity amongst teens and obviously adolescents. And also, statistics show that it's becoming more of a normative thing, and I think that this should be a cause for concern, and research should push towards finding direct links and ways to combat early sexual activity amongst our youth. So here's one of the studies that I came across was adolescent activity and religiosity, which was a very good article, and it says, and according to this research, higher levels of family cohesion in teenagers from religious families tended to have peers who exhibited higher levels of positive behaviors, which mediate sexual activity due to the presence of like-minded friends. And I think this makes sense because you hang around people who have good habits and are pushing towards other things beyond typical sexual relationships, or doing drugs, or getting involved in deviant behaviors. I think that this statistic makes a lot of sense. It says concurrently, the study also found that both positive and negative peer environments are linked to adolescent sexual activity and contraceptive use outcomes. Within this article, it did show a lot of positive as far as having a tight family and morals and things that come from having religion as a foundation within your family. But also it has some negative connotations, like being judged, or feeling the pressures of religion in your family, and being guilty if you do engage in these types of activities. So I feel like more programs and things within the church should push towards factors of kind of helping teens recognize that even if they are, or they found themselves in a situation where they're being sexually active, that what they can do to protect themselves, to for safer sex, to reduce unintended pregnancies, or receiving an STD from unprotected sexual activity. So I think that's a key point for this article. This one I didn't really put nothing because I have no access to the internet, but basically patterns of learning about sexual information, where most of our sexual information comes from schools and within schools, whether that be sex ed or learning about STDs. And some of the positive outcomes of this would be parents, peers, media, and condom use. So the more we educate our children, and the more that our families beyond school come together and realize the importance of early sexual activity, I think will produce these positive outcomes, and also limit the patterns of sexual activity amongst teenagers. So I feel like information is very important. Some of the disorders linked to sexual activity I thought was another important issue as far as mental health these days, and some of the side some of the consequences that can come of having these type of disorders, like callous and emotional or conduct disorder. Most of these students or adolescents have trouble, not only regulating themselves but also inhibiting their behaviors, their negative behaviors, and that also leads to sexual activity because they don't have no they're not thinking through things and thinking about the unintended consequences that come about acting in this way. And also some protective factors order needs to be considered because this is obviously something that's very important in the field and the perspective of mental health. So I feel like further research needs to take these traits into consideration, these factors, these variables, because many of our students suffer from these type of disorders, and I feel that it's important. So this is another article that was very telling in the outcomes that could occur, not only just dealing with mental health, but some of the consequences that these students may put themselves through. Another article also discussed parent monitoring and maternal psychopathology and sexual activity. So basically the links between parental monitoring. Parental monitoring is a good tool that parents could use when not only talking with their kids, but also monitoring what the activities that they're doing, whether that be online, social media, or also their daily activities, like the friends they hang out with. I mean, even though it could be maybe sometimes crossing the line, but if you have that open relationship and that dialogue with your kids, I feel like this could be another protective factor that could help limit the occurrence of early sexual activity. Also, for example, periods of psychosocial distress like depression or anxiety could lead parents to withdraw and subsequently monitor less. So not only parent monitoring, but also parents struggling with mental illness as well. They won't have the energy, the capacity, due to dealing with their own mental issues to be parents who monitor more, and the subsequently leads them to withdraw from being able to help their kids progress positively through this stage. Also, an awareness for healthcare practitioners and service providers, that being those working in schools, in the medical field, community agencies and services, should need to address this properly and make sure that the mothers getting the support that they need in order to ultimately help the children progress through life and education, and just becoming a positive member in society by giving them good guidance and mentoring them in the correct and positive way. So some sexual initiation among European adolescents, just another article that shows that not only within America but also outside countries too, that baseline sexual experiences occur often with adolescents 16 years or old by those exposed to smoking, alcohol, illegal drug consumption, poor sleep, sedentariness, and high media use. I found this fact kind of interesting because it does seem like it would lead to higher occurrences, but there's also research out there that combats this, saying that there's other variables involved and there's no direct link to it. But I also see that there's something to be said about these particular variables that could bring about higher rates of sexual activity. So the article also states that baseline consumption of alcohol, illegal drugs, and tobacco were reliable predictors of sexual initiation during the 12-month follow-up. So this article was basically initial follow-ups, kind of like a longitudinal study, but that helped students or created identifiers for students after they were indicated that they consumed alcohol, illegal drugs. So I thought that was a very good way to to get data, back it up, and kind of push others to look at these variables in future research. So the association between risky behaviors and sexual initiation was particularly strong in younger females and among girls, when the outcome was associated with reduced sleep, multiple partners, or infrequent condom use. So there's also other things as far as gender, differences between gender and variables like reduced sleep, multiple partners, or infrequent condom use as being a high probability of sexual activity among adolescent females, which I thought was interesting. So in conclusion, special considerations may, for instance, be needed for younger girls because the strong association between non-sexual and sexual behaviors identifies them as a particularly vulnerable group, because double standards and distinctive reproductive and genealogical health risk. So basically, girls, I feel like girls or younger females should be looked at very closely and to better help them identify the types of situations they can get themselves into, and also to kind of reduce that stigma, the double standard, because they are females. And also, many occurrences and beliefs within this literature discuss why females are the essential pieces are the gatekeepers that can significantly reduce sexual activity amongst adolescents. So obviously, it takes two to tango, and I feel like this was a very telling part of the literature, that if we do educate and take a more active approach in working with younger females and kind of helping them understand the consequences that could come of early sexual activity, I feel like this would help significantly reduce teenage sexual activity. So families will always be the primary influence, and parental monitoring will be the next stage as children move into adolescence. And I just feel like immediate family and having a good dialogue with your children is always going to be the primary influence. So I feel like programs and things need to include parents, families, and kind of get that cohesion factor going, and teach parents and young adolescents that they need to work together in order to provide a safe place where they can talk about instances where they may be influenced or pressured to engage in early sexual activity. So that's it, and thank you guys for watching and listening to my research project. I really appreciate it. Thank you.